everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to part 3 of circular motion expression tutorial. And we left off kind of here, and we were talking about addressing some fine-tuned control of the cyclical transparency that is on, here, let me get rid of these guys for a sec. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to adjust the cyclical transparency a little bit, get more control, and produce something that will be yet even more interesting, which I'll now get rid of. Let's go back to where we left off. Let's have a look at our current set of animations. So right now, let's look closely at axis sum and geometry sum. And they're all in phase like we set it up. But what I really want to do is make this frequency of the transparency to be a bit more, to be a higher frequency, you know, and have a more, a faster in and out, sort of fade up, fade down. So right now, transparency of sum is referring to axis sum position.z, which is in turn referring to spinner position.x, and that is a convenient shortcut because, you know, it makes for easy cutting and pasting. However, it does not allow you to really have a close look at the parameters that go into making this z curve here. So we make that, and then we in turn refer to that from transparency, but those values are already baked in. By this indirect reference, by cascading these expressions, we save time, but we're not able to access the original parameters that went into making this thing possible in the first place. By this thing, I mean this thing. So we want to take the expression that made axis position.z, we want to edit it, and what we'll just do now is select the whole thing, and that'll load both the text buffer for Flame and also the Linux paste buffer. Then let's go to the transparency of geometry sum, and we'll edit that, and instead of where it says axis sum.position.z, we'll delete that whole thing, and we're going to replace it with the highlighted text of the thing it was referring to. And you do that by just getting your middle mouse, clicking, hitting enter, and in theory, nothing should have changed because all we're doing is eliminating the middleman and giving us access to the original inputs that made that motion possible. So now what we want to do, now that we have access to the original inputs, is edit that expression and take spinner position.x and multiply it by, let's say, 3 times. So it'll essentially make the movement of that axis 3 times as fast. And when I do that, watch the highlighted curve change in its wavelength and frequency. Undo, redo. So we've made this a much quicker fade up, fade down. And that looks like this, which when it's in front of camera is working fine, but you notice that it's flickering on and off. So we'll address that on and off flickering by putting a conditional around this thing. Let's have a look at our curves here. We'll go back. Here's our axis position.z, and it kind of hitting off right about when it's at 110, which is what it says here. It looks like this whole thing is starting to happen. So what we'll do is take this transparency expression, we will modify it, and we have this whole shebang kind of working, with the exception that it's happening in the background where we don't want it. So we're going to put this whole thing behind an if statement. And we will say if, parentheses, and for our test, we will do axis, which is with an S, not a Z, axis sum, which is its parent, dot position, dot Z, and we'll say when that's greater than 110, which is 110, we will, comma, then do the entire expression that we had before, hit end, put another comma and say if it's false, then else we will do a return of just 100% transparency, which is going to make it invisible. Hit the closing paren, of your if statement, hit enter, hope to God you didn't make a typo, and now that you can see that curve are kind of coinciding. When one is just about at 110, the transparency animation is starting. And the word something should now be bright in front, exactly, fade off very quickly when that's equal to about 110. And when it comes around again, it'll do the same thing. So let's just propagate that throughout the rest of our tree here, which isn't that difficult, because if we take geometry sum and the expression that we just typed in, we can copy it, select, say, more in this case, and then paste it into there. And we need to modify it so that instead of referring to access sum, it refers to its own parent access, which is access more. Just replace that one word, hit enter, and now they both should be behaving similar fashion. Exactly. See how more is up and down quickly? Something's up and down quickly. Interesting still needs the modification, which we can quickly do. Go to enter, transparency, paste, edit, home, and then change sum into enter, and it'll be referring to its own parent access. So now they should all be kind of flicking on and off fast when they're in front of the camera, which indeed they are. So let's make this yet even more interesting. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. We could put a parent access around all of these and duplicate them, which I think is a good way to go. So access, branch, duplicate, move this over here. Like I say, in the first couple of versions, first couple of iterations of this, we should really name these to be proper. But for the sake of expediency, because I know these are coming out kind of long, I'm just going to change this geometry from something to very, very, and I will change more into much. And I'll just throw in a random word here. Let's say thinking. And we'll take a look at our animation. And it's kind of okay. You've got different text. They are in the same phase. And what we want to do is go to the axes that are controlling these. And we're going to change that offset. Remember, we offset them 120 degrees, so they'd be 3 per cycle. So for the word sum, we had no offset. We will now add one. Modify the Y channel. We'll go into the inner bit here, and we will add, let's say 40 degrees. We will do the same for the Z channel. Edit, spinner position.x plus 40. We'll go back. Now at least a couple of these ought to be out of phase. Aha. So there's very, very in something, and they're 40 degrees out of phase, because you remember spinner's X position is essentially degrees. And let's just do the same for access more 1, which should technically be called access much, but again, we gotta roll through this here. So access more 1, position Y. Now it already has the 120 degree offset, so we'll change that to, I don't know, we did 40 before, we'll add 30, let's say, and make it, oh, I don't know, let's just make it 130. And let's do the same on the Z channel. Edit, go from 120 to 130. That might not be enough separation, but let's see. Yeah, it's kind of not, man. Those are sort of bunched up. Let me do a quick re-edit here. And we were 120 originally, went to 130. I don't know, let's do 160. And we'll do the same on Z. Change the 130 degree offset into 160. Now it's jumping about. It's going to look more cool. And lastly, we'll do the same thing to access enter, which is this. And it's offset by 240. We'll add some semi-random number that's around 30 and call it, we'll add another 40. We'll make that 270, 275 just for kicks. Hit enter. It didn't choke, that's good. Modify the Z1 to whatever we said. I think it was 275. Even if they're a little different, you're just going to get a more interesting result. Now as we go around, we're getting that. Here, let me reset the camera so it looks sort of better when it's... So you have two of these Ferris wheels going. They're both controlled by a single axis, which is this guy, and they're a little bit out of phase, by somewhat random values, and they are also blinking on and off faster, which is what we wanted to do. So again, I have this animation set between 0 and 720, but you can just as well grab this axis, shove it around here, and whenever you like it, just figure out how to keyframe for it, and you should be good to go. And I appreciate you watching. The name's Beak, and I will see you all on the other side.